I'm Austinlugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is Nothing to Say.
I shook the camera really quick. Let's do it again. Sorry.
I can call that out. You just need to say your part.
No, I know. Just do it
You want to
again.
do the whole thing again?
Yeah.
Okay.
And let's talk about Return of the Living Dead.
So, this week was your choice, Brent.
Yeah,
Andrew.
I gotta choose the other movie.
And you chose this, The Return of the Night of the Living Dead, which I...
Return of the Living Dead. Also.
Return of the Living Dead.
Return of the Night of the Living Dead.
Whatever. And you said... Because I asked if this was a sequel to The Night of the Living Dead, and you said it's not.
It kind of is.
But it kind of is.
No, I mean,
it's
kind of fun.
It's like a...
It's sort of a pseudo-sequel kind of thing. I would say that Dawn of the Dead is more of a sequel to Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
But I guess Return of the Living Dead is more of like a spiritual sequel in a way.
It's like inspired by Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and it has... Yeah, that's pretty much what I would say.
And they actually reference the Night of the Living Dead as a movie in that movie.
Yeah, it's like a weird... yeah, like... I guess we'll talk about that too, we'll just talk about that where it's like, yeah, they briefly mention Night of the Living Dead as like a movie that exists in the world of Return of the Living Dead. Although it's not 100% accurate, and of course we'll talk about that, like the nature of the zombies and how they operate in Return. But yeah, like I guess I was incorrect in saying that it wasn't a sequel. It kind of pretty much is, but
yeah.
But it's a movie in which the Night of the Living Dead movie exist in the world of this movie. And they mentioned that like, yeah, it actually happened, but it like things are a little bit different in terms of the details. So maybe the best zombie movie I've seen personally. I've seen all the Romero movies except for his like 3 newer ones.
Right.
I haven't seen the Dawn of the Dead remake. But like, yeah, and just kind of, I don't know, for me it just kind of like hits on all like my favorite sensibilities in terms of like a horror film. And yeah, it's just like the best, probably is the best zombie horror film. I would say maybe rivals like Dawn of the Dead. That's my favorite of the like Romero trilogy. But yeah, I would say they're both neck and neck.
So we open up in a warehouse, and you have two of our main characters, whose names are... I can never remember anybody's names from like any movie. Like every time I watch a movie, the names just...
That's why I always have like, when we talk, I always have like something open to be sure. But yeah, I think it's like it's Frank and Freddy.
And Freddy's the kid.
Freddy is the kid.
And Frank's like basically his boss, I guess.
His manager.
His manager.
Yeah. And they are working at a medical supply facility in Louisville, Kentucky. And they have a boss who owns it named Bert.
Bert. That's right. Which is Freddy's uncle.
I don't know.
They say that a couple of times.
I guess
they refer to him as Uncle Bert. Maybe it's not like his...
I guess I'm not sure. Maybe.
I'm not
I don't
sure.
know.
Anyways, so they work in this medical center, and they provide like skeletons and like cadavers,
cut in half dogs.
Yeah. And when we open up, I think it's really interesting. One of the things about this film is there are really almost no close-ups. Like it's almost all wides, and especially in these opening scenes, it feels like you're kind of intruding on these people. Like it doesn't feel cinematic in the sense of like, say, Night of the Living Dead. Like, right, the blocking is very well.
Yeah, there's a lot of close-ups in that.
Right, there's a lot of close-ups, and it's like
screaming.
A lot of people screaming. Where this feels almost, it almost feels like documentary-esque in the sense that it's like very far back. There's a lot of telephoto lenses. They're often kind of like watching from a distance and from like weird angles, almost as kind of like you are following them, which I think creates this sort of creepy tone to it from the very beginning. That's just like weird and creepy. But then there's also the thing about the tone of this movie that's so much different than Night of the Living Dead is this is I would describe this more as a comedy than I really would
It's a comedy.
a horror.
Film.
Yeah, it's like a comedy horror film.
Yeah, it's like a screwball. Kind
Screwball. Yeah, it's
of,
like
kind of like a Robert Altman film kind of thing. Yeah, in really every aspect. I mean, it's still a horror movie through and through. It has, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, it's very, very funny.
And so
like right from the beginning.
Yeah, just hilarious. And so they're walking. Frank is showing Freddy like how to, because this is Freddy's first day.
Yeah, he's training. Yeah.
So Frank is showing Freddy these different like locations and like how to like do these things, and then he shows him the one dead body they have, like a not a live cadaver, but like a
corpse.
A corpse in
Brand
like
corpse,
a freezer. And it's like it's the first like creepy moment in the film. It's kind of like has this like eerie music playing in the background. Frank's super comfortable. He's just like whatever. Freddy's a bit freaked out about it.
Yeah. Yep.
And then after that, they go into the office, and there's like a ton of like little visual gags that they like never reference.
There's a lot of visual and dialogue, little gags here and there that are really, really good. Yeah. Which one?
I'm thinking of the one behind them. There's a poster, and it looks like just like a eyesight poster.
Yeah.
Right, but if you like read it out, it says Bert is a slave driver.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of good little things like that are really, really funny. And yeah, they're like in that office and they're talking to each other, and I think like Freddy is like looking through like a book or something. They're just like sitting at like, he's like looking through like an anatomy book or something like that. Like he has really no idea what he's doing. But he asks I'm looking down. He asks Frank like, what's just like the craziest thing you've ever seen, the most gnarly thing you've ever seen? And Frank proceeds to tell him like, have you ever seen Night of the Living Dead? He's like, oh yeah, or, I guess, yeah. And he's like, well, that's actually true, except like some of the details were messed up because the guy who was making the movie, the government approached him about it and told him he couldn't tell the true story. And he said because of some government mix-up, they got basically zombies there. And he's like, you want to check it out? Kind of like, hey, you want to see it? And he's like, see what? He's like, the bodies in the basement. And they go in the basement. They're like, and they have these like big metal containers, and on the side of them it says like, for an emergency, call this number. It's like an 800 number. And they and they like look inside of it, and it's like some like gross wrinkly body or whatever. And of course you get like the best gag, which is like they're like he's like, do these things? Freddy says, did these things ever leak? He's like, and Frank is like, hell no, these are made by the Army Corps of Engineers. And he hits it, and right when he hits it, it sprays out this horrible gas from the containers. It leaks out, and it sprays them like right in the fucking face. And that like basically starts the movie. You get the title card and everything, and it's a great start to the movie. You're really not expecting that when you watch it the first time. Yeah. That like something bad is gonna happen to obviously set off the movie. Like you're like, oh, this can't go wrong, but just right away, like he hits it and just like it kind of starts the movie. It's a good beginning.
Yeah, it's a fun opening credits where it like follows the fog, and you can see it like go into the one cadaver guy and all that. And that's when, right after that credit sequence, is when they cut to the like
Freddy's friends,
which
are great.
Which is great. Every one of them just like they're these I don't know, like
punks,
80s punk. Yeah. They all have very, very punk, right? You have like the one kid who, Chad, I think's his name, the one that's dressed like basically Tom Cruise in Risky Business. He has like a oversized suit jacket.
He's got the tie. Yeah,
he's got like the tie.
Yeah, he's got kind of like a bowl haircut. You have Spider. Spider is played by Miguel Nunez Jr., who plays basically the same character in one of the Friday the 13th sequels. Yeah, it's like the same. He has the exact same look. Of course, he gets killed. That scene's actually really weird if you've ever seen that movie that he's in. I'm not even going to explain the scene, but he dies while taking a shit, like in a porta potty in that movie. But anyway, I digress. And you have Leanna Quigley. She plays Trash.
Yeah.
Who's the she is like a like, you know, quote unquote, like death obsessed, like punk, and she has like bright red hair and stuff like that. And yeah, like I love everybody's outfits. The way that everyone looks just looks awesome. They look really funny. Yeah, and they're like walking around, and basically they're just saying like, yeah, like Freddie's got this new job, and you know we want to go to this party, and we have to wait till 10 o'clock to hang out with him. And that's pretty much the idea of their conversation. And you for the first, I would say, half of the movie, you're kind of going back and forth between the people at the medical facility and then the friends. And yeah, I think we go back to the medical facility where Freddie and Frank kind of realize something is wrong, which is a great part of the movie where they figure out that all the things that were once dead there are now alive, which is a great scene.
Yeah, they wake up, they walk upstairs, and they start hearing like this dog, like it's like dogs barking,
they hear the
like
dogs,
whining,
yeah.
and they're like, "What the heck is
What was
that?"
Yeah.
Because at this moment they don't really know what's going on. They just thought like the gas leaked and like knocked them out, and they're not feeling very well.
Yeah, they feel like crap.
And so they're like walking around, like following the dog noises, and then they see the half cut open dog.
It's alive, yeah. It's like yelping. I love it too because it's like glistening now. It's like the glistening, and they freak out. And like Frank like tries
just
to hit
stands
it.
like a shovel.
Yeah, and it's like yelping and stuff, and like the butterfly. They have like
Butterflies. They're like
moving now. Yeah, it's like great, and yeah, they're like freaking out because they're just like whoa, like because I think they have a good idea what's going on, and they hear the corpse now yelling very loudly and banging on the door, and they quickly lock the door, and they're like, one thing about this movie is that throughout basically the whole movie, everybody is freaking out. Everybody is like perpetually freaking out and like yelling and stuff.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really like grow old or stale. Like they do a really good job at kind of like reacting relatively realistically to the situation, to be honest. Like it's a very like messed up situation, but everybody reacts pretty, it feels very realistic in my opinion, the way that everybody reacts, how everyone just kind of yells and freaks out and stuff, and it's very good in that aspect.
So then we cut back to the punk kids, and they're in Suicide's car.
The guy,
who's got like
he's crazy. Yeah, he's like a giant guy with like like
he has like a chain that goes from like his ear to like his
nose
mouth
or lip or something like
that. Something like that. He's just got chains like everywhere. He's got like black leather.
Yeah.
And they pull up to
they're driving around.
They're driving around,
and he's like mad and stuff too. They're all the friends and their conversations are great. They're
great
funny.
conversation. And they pull up to the like facility, and it's important to note that Freddie's girlfriend is like one of the
Yes, I forgot to mention that.
People in like the punk, and she's the one who wants to go get Freddie, and she is very different from all the other punk characters. She's not really punk.
I know, that's why it's so good, is because they're all like completely different like personalities and styles and stuff like that, but they're all friends. They all want to hang out and party.
Yeah.
It's like, it's great, you know. Yeah.
And so they get there and they're like, oh, we'll just like go in, and you know, first of all they're mad that he even has a job, because it's not punk to work, I guess.
Yeah. He's becoming a square.
A square.
Yeah. Oh, Brandon got me coffee. Really, for me?
Look at that, assistant Brandon over here.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay, that's very nice of you. I bet it's delicious.
It is.
And there's creamer and stuff in there too.
I'm gonna drink a lot of coffee.
You're gonna need it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. No, I'm okay. I don't know. But thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, anyways, they pull up to like the facility, and Freddie's girlfriend is like, "Hey, we shouldn't go in there. We'll probably like scare them off." Which, yeah. So they're like, "Oh, there's a graveyard across the street.
There's a graveyard across. Yeah.
Let's go. Party it up in there."
What are we gonna do while we wait for him to get out of work? Like, this is kind of lame. Let's just go to the graveyard and just they have a boombox. They go in there and they start hanging out, and they're just hanging out at the graveyard. They have to it's like an abandoned graveyard. Is worth mentioning. Like, the people who've been dead there are been dead for so long that no one visits the graves because because the people that knew them are also dead. So so it's just like a graveyard full of old graves, and they're just like, we'll just hang out here.
Yeah.
And back at the facility, they decide to call their boss.
Yes.
The boss of the facility. They're like, we can't really call the cops. Maybe we could. They talked about calling the army, but they're like, no, I don't want to.
Bad for business.
Bad for the business. It's horrible for business. Let's just call the boss and maybe we can figure out something to do. And the boss arrives. He's like, what's going on? And they kind of just let him know, like, yeah, those tanks, they leaked, they got all over, and now the body that was in the freezer is now alive. And they clearly hear someone in there. And they're like, well, what happened in the movie? They got the brains. They hit the brain. Because in all the Romero movies, they just shoot him in the head or in the brain, and then they're done.
They're done.
So they decide to let him out and see if they can hit him in the brain and kill him.
Yeah.
Before he kill him again, I guess you could say.
And so they let him out. And I don't know if I've ever seen a zombie that looked like the zombie that came out of the cadaver room. It's like this, like almost blank latex.
Well, it's like a perfect specimen, I guess you could say. It's the body that was meant for like a college anatomy class or something like that. So it's just kind of like a newly dead, perfectly preserved body. So it's not like a body that's been like rotting underground,
right,
like a thing. So it's like, it's like totally, but it's like yellowy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And there must be some scientific explanation for that. Maybe it's like I don't know what to say about that. But
I think it's like the casing, like they put like a casing around the cadaver.
Oh, okay.
So I think it's like, that's why it's like all like smooth too.
Oh, okay.
So you don't like see like its face or anything.
No,
right?
no.
Yeah. So I think that's why. And so it runs out. It immediately tackles Bert.
Yeah, it's like fast and strong.
Yeah, which is very different. Like that's the moment you kind of realize that these zombies are very different from George A. Romero's zombies, are really zombies in most zombie movies.
The rules are kind of out the window with other zombie movies, and I think you're especially cognizant of that when they get him down and they have a pike and they hit him in the head and he's still moving around, like he's still like yelling and moving. And they're like, what? And they get a bone. By the way, this whole thing is very hilarious. It's very physical comedy, very, everybody's yelling, freaking out. Everybody audibly and physically are very, like, disturbed about the whole situation. Everybody's screaming and yelling. And they decide, like, all right, get the bone saw. I'm going to cut off his head. They cut off his head, which you see him cutting off the head. And then he gets up, which is it looks great, by the way.
Incredible.
It really does look like a guy without his head. Because if you think about it, like, that has to be a person. So that means that they had to put, like, a casing over his head to make it look like it, like, because that would look, I feel like, I don't even know how to begin, like, how to look like that. I mean, you would probably just have to get, like, a really short person who kind of has the same stature and be able to kind of, like, make that thing so that it looks like, the shoulders are coming down here. Like, that would look so awkward. It would look like, you're suddenly taller. And I believe I heard that in this movie, they actually had hired another visual effects artist before this one that works on the movie that we mostly see in the movie. And I think, like, he was fired because he did such a bad job. And I've seen pictures of, like, this figure without the
original
head, and it looks, like, really bad. Like, it looks, like, really, really bad. Like, very embarrassing. And I think they ended up filming some of it, so there are some shots of that effect in the original in the final cut of the movie. And I think he also did the one with the skeleton comes out and he opens up his mouth, which is like one of the worst effects in the movie. It's just kind of like, it's funny, but it's not like anything great. But yeah, that's kind of funny. But then they got this new guy who obviously did a really good job with that, so really good.
So they cut off his head, and the body's still, like, running around. The head's, like, still, like, mumbling. At this point, it's not clear if they can, like, talk or not yet, although later we learn that, of course, they're actually pretty damn smart and can, like, communicate. And so it's running around, and they're, like, freaking out, and they're like, what do we do? And Bert's like, oh, you know what? My, like, the person who works across the street is, of course, it's like a funeral home. It's like a morgue.
Yeah.
And we've been friends for like 25 years. Let's take this body and incinerate him, because like everything they try, it just doesn't work. Cutting off his head doesn't work. Hitting his brains doesn't work. Stabbing him in the heart, nothing works. And then we cut back to the punk kids again.
Yeah, the punk kids. They're in the Yeah, they're still in the cemetery. They're still hanging out there. I think this is the dance scene.
Yep.
The great dance scene, which is a classic scene in terms of horror films. Once again, Diana Quigley, or Leanna Quigley. I have to see.
Unsure.
Linnea Quigley. Trash. She's like talking to one of the characters, and she's like, "Have you ever fantasized?" Spider. Yeah. Have you ever fantasized about dying? You know, just kind of like the melodramatic kind of punk thing. She's like, and Spider's like, no. And Trash is like, it's a funny scene. She's just like, I fantasize about dying in just the worst way possible. I fantasize a bunch of old men ripping my body apart. And then she like basically takes off all her clothes. I love too. She like takes off all her clothes and like, guys, check it out. Trash is taking off all her clothes again. Like she's done this multiple times before, which is like a great like weird line. And then she like just takes off all her clothes, and they have like these flares, and she's like just dancing nude on top of one of the just coffins or whatever. And it's a classic scene. They're just partying. They're having fun. I know that Leanna Quigley, if you go on Letterboxd, she's been in almost 200 movies. And I think she has that's kind of like her thing. She kind of plays characters like this in horror movies. She's in a lot of horror movies and stuff. So that's kind of like her thing. She kind of like plays these. Actually, it's funny. Delilah and I, there's this vintage store we go to called Fat Rabbit in Louisville. And she's going to be in Louisville.
Really?
In August 7th to do like a film retrospective.
Oh, that's cool.
For like a Q&A. It was like, oh, okay. We might go, but I don't think we will. But it's... like that's kind of like her thing, and I believe this is probably like one of her earlier films. So, it's just like a funny random scene. Basically, the idea is that they're having fun while they're waiting for Freddy, and I think this is when too one of the characters is like, "Hey, is that Freddy going to the morgue across the street?" And then he's like, "No, why would he be doing that?" So and then we caught to them going to the morgue. Which, by the way, I will say once again, not once again, but I want to quickly say real quick. This movie has a really good balance of young actors and old actors. That's all I gotta say. Just like a good balance of like, it's not just young people, it's not just old people, or even just like middle-aged people. You have like these older characters and these younger characters, and there's like a really good balance between the two that feels really real.
And I think we might have skipped over this moment. It's a really short scene. It might have happened after the first time we meet the kids. Is that scene with the general at his house in Malibu? The scene where we establish the general, which has my favorite line in the movie, by the way, where this random general in California, we don't know yet what he's doing. He goes home to like his big mansion. He walks in, and his wife's like, "Oh, honey, how was work?" And he's just like, the usual crap. And he calls someone, and he talks with his wife, and he's like, "Yeah, like they have to know I'm accessible 24/7 until we find the stuff." Right, which it seems at this point, it's clear at this point that the stuff they're looking for is the stuff in the basement of the
it's just established that they've been trying to find it for a long time.
So, anyways, we cut back to the morgue, and that's when we meet the man who runs the morgue. Who
he's great.
He's my favorite character.
Ernie, he's very good.
Ernie is so great. He's incredible. I don't think I've ever seen him I've never seen an actor in a film before, but his performance is great. I love every second of it. It reminded me a lot of Back to the Future. That character, the scientist,
Doc Brown.
Yeah. It kind of has those kind of feels to it.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
It's just kind of like
he's a scientist.
He's like the scientist. It's kind of like over the top, but it's also just like
very lawful, neutral.
Yeah.
Very good.
So they So first, Bert comes in, and he's like, "How long have we been friends?"
They have an awkward conversation about rigor mortis.
Yeah.
By the way, that body that he's working on, that effect in itself is amazing.
Yeah.
It's like a dead body. It looked real, and it's like all bruised with rigor mortis, and he's got like needles in it. Obviously, he's embalming it or something. That effect in itself, really good. It looks like he's actually like examining something.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible, and he like talks to him, and he's like, you would do like whatever, right? Like we're really close. And he's like, yeah,
I guess. Yeah.
So then Freddie and Frank come in, and immediately Ernie's like freaking out. He's like, no, like you can't be here, like it's illegal, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
and they bring in like 20 little trash bags,
They're flailing.
and they're flailing around,
Yeah.
which is like I'm not really sure how they did that either. Like, do they put like little like battery powered? I don't know, like.
Oh, like in the context of like the movie production?
Yeah, like
yeah.
like
I mean,
where are they
yeah,
putting those trash
honestly,
bags?
yeah. I mean, I doubt they put living things in there. I mean, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah, yeah.
But there must be some remote control thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Once again, that's also amazing. I don't know how they did that.
And so they're carrying all these trash bags in, and Bert tries to convince Ernie that it is a bunch of rabid weasels.
That we have to incinerate.
Yeah, that they have to use the incinerator to kill. And of course, Ernie's like, "Well, why don't you just call it like pest control?" He's like, "No, it'd be too bad." And he's like, "Well, I have a gun with me," because of course he does. And he's like, "I'll just go out to the parking lot and
Oh, I
shoot."
forgot. The one gag where he's listening to music, he can't hear people.
Yeah.
And then he arrives and he's like, "Hey, Ernie, what you doing?" And he's like,
Immediately pulls the gun
points
out.
the gun. He's like, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize." Like, I love that's a great introduction to the gun. The fact that he has a gun is he thinks yeah.
So he's like, no, the rabbit. And at this point, it's clear that Ernie's just not buying whatever. Like, it's clear that he knows that they're not rabid weasels. And Bert's like, you can't tell anybody. Like, this is like a huge deal. And you just gotta keep this on down low. And he's like, well, it's gonna be a pretty big favor in return.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like this ongoing joke through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's fine. So they open up one of the bags, and it is the arm, right? Just like arm to like elbow.
And they like throw it on the ground.
And it's like crawls around and like grabs Ernie and like
looks so good.
Awesome. Again, just another incredible effect. And it grabs him by the leg, and they rip it off, and his pants come off with it, and he's freaking out. And they're like, we have to burn it. Like, there is no other option. It's the only thing we could do. And that's when they go to the incinerator, right? Or incinerator.
Yep, they go into the incinerator. By the way, at this point too, Freddie and Frank look a little off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're looking a little drawn and pale.
And they're like you can tell that. It's interesting. Every time you see them, they're a little more pale than they were at the beginning. Yep. And it's just like this little thing that you wouldn't really think about. Yeah, it's very thoughtful. And they're like starting to pale, and they're like they're becoming more sluggish, kind of nauseous.
And I think right after they incinerate the body, which is what they do in the next scene, I think right after they incinerate the body, they both are like, yeah, we're feeling kind of bad. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they incinerate it. They just kind of throw it in there, and yep, it should be all burnt up. We'll go up the smokestack, and it's established that the particles, the ash particles, go up into the sky, and then it rains. And the rain goes onto the ground, and it goes onto the cemetery where the kids are. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they when it starts raining, the kids freak out too. And Trash, she's like naked still, and she's like, "Oh, it's burning my skin!" Like they're both all freaking out, and they're all yelling and stuff. And they get into the car, and it won't start. And that scene in itself is really good when they're all like talking in the car. They're all like talking over one another. Yeah. It's like really good. It's like just, it just feels like real. Yeah. It just feels like they're all actually like kind of upset, that it's like raining and it's like kind of giving them a burning sensation.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you slowly start to realize like, something is wrong is happening to the cemetery, and the zombies in the cemetery are rising up, and and that kind of really sets off a big problem for everyone.
And so at this point, all the punk kids, they run into the warehouse, right? Because the roof to the car is like leaking.
Yeah. I think which warehouse are you talking about?
The warehouse where Freddie and Frank and Bert work.
Yes, I think so.
Because they go in there. Mm-hmm. And
I think they realize nothing is there, right?
Yeah, because I think they're still looking for Freddy, and they go in there.
Oh wait, no, I think doesn't Freddy's girlfriend go in there first?
Yes, Freddy's girlfriend goes in there first.
She goes in there first because she's looking for Freddy.
Yeah,
she walks around, and she for some reason decides to go in the basement.
Well, I think she hears something in the basement. Doesn't she?
Okay, gotcha.
I think so.
Okay.
And so she walks down the steps, and of course at the beginning of the film, which we didn't talk about, they established that the third step, whatever step, is a little wonky. which is just an incredible foreshadowing moment. And she steps down, and she gets to the bottom of the stairs, and she's looking for Freddy. She doesn't see him. She sees like this big barrel.
Yeah.
She looks in the barrel. There's nothing in it.
Yeah.
She turns around.
And it's
And one of my favorite zombie designs. I think.
Isn't it amazing?
It's incredible.
It's like a tar man zombie thing, and I believe it's a puppet.
Really?
I think it might be. I could be wrong. If you look at the credits, I think I saw a thing that was like a puppeteer worked on it or something like that, but I'm not sure. I would need to double check to see for sure if the tar man is a puppet or if it's a person in a costume. But either way, yeah, it's like a sludgy black melty thing that was in the canister, but of course like melted after being in there for years and years and years. And yeah, it's just like its eyeballs are like in his skull, and it has his teeth still, but it's like the way that it moves too,
really weird.
Has like no muscles. It's basically just like it has barely like any meat on it, just only a little bit, where it's kind of stumbling around and stuff. Yeah, and it attacks Freddy's girlfriend. But yeah, it's amazing.
And so she tries to run up the stairs, but of course that third step breaks. She falls through. Now the zombie whatever thing's coming after her. She runs into like this cabinet, locks it, and this is the first time you kind of see the intelligence of these zombies, because he gets like a chain, and he like wraps it around like the door of this locker, and like basically uses like a pulley system to like start pulling it away.
Yeah, it's like using a piece of technology. Like it's but it's like nothing. It's like basically no muscles, I suppose. So yeah, you're right. It shows how intelligent the zombies are and how fucked they are too.
And that's when the other punk kids come into the warehouse, right? Because
I believe so. I believe they go down to the basement.
Yeah, because they hear her screaming.
And yeah, right before she's in danger, she runs away, but Suicide gets chomped in the head. He dies.
Yep.
Yeah, who's probably he's like the most like heroic, I guess. Maybe not heroic, but like he's like the biggest guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, he gets his head chopped in two, which is a good effect too, of like the head going into the other head, and of the teeth going into his head. And yeah, they all freak out and run away, and I think they lock the basement up and make sure that the tar man doesn't leave or anything like that. But
and so then they split up because Chad and one of the girls who like Chad's basically in love with this girl and she hates him.
I like her hair, by the way. It's got like Bride of Frankenstein look to it. It's a great haircut.
And so they split up, and then Spider.
Here, I'm actually gonna go on the Wikipedia page real quick.
I think like
if you want to cut this off, it's okay. If you don't want to, that's okay. But I just want to like make sure we're like doing it because I'm trying to remember it too. I saw it not too long ago, but yeah, at this point in the movie, everybody's like splitting up and stuff. So it's
have they called? Well, I'm trying to think when they cut back to the morgue.
Wait one second.
Dude, yeah.
Goes to the warehouse. After. So yeah, after when they realize that Freddy is actually did go to the mortuary, like, okay, we have to go there now. But that's when they get attacked by the zombies, I think.
Right, because they have to run through the cemetery.
I believe so, yeah.
Yes, and that's when like they see like all these like zombies, which again, incredible. I think what's so interesting about this film that I think separates it from a lot of zombie movies is it's a lot of, even I would say, Night of the Living Dead, but not so much Dawn of the Dead or Day of the Dead, is in Night of the Living Dead and a lot of those early zombie movies and later zombie movies is all the zombies kind of look the same, right? They all kind of have like the same design.
Yeah, because it's like, back then you didn't like, they're operating on a shoestring budget, and especially in Dawn of the Dead, it's clear that they had one of the greatest on I think, I'm not sure on night, but no, I know on Lisa at Dawn and on day they had the Tom Savini worked on, and he's like one of the greatest visual effects movie artists of all time. But I know that in Dawn of the Dead, they're working on a shoestring budget, so with especially in the mall where you have tons of zombies, it's like, all right, put some makeup on, whatever. It's like, because it's like we have to move on, we have to move on because we have we have to film the scenes in the mall.
Right. And there's like hundreds of them.
Yes. But yeah, in this movie, and once again, in Army of the Dead, which we talked about.
The Zack Snyder film.
Yeah, the Zack Snyder film. They brag about like, oh yeah, like we use a computer-generated technology to make computer-generated zombies to make it look like there are tons of zombies everywhere. And there are other zombie movies that I've done that too in recent time. But in return, they don't, they have tons of people and they do a good job at making it look pretty full.
Yeah. And
they all look really good. And Army of the Dead is, no, not Army of the Dead. Day of the Dead is another good example of how each of the zombies look crazy, unique, and interesting. And yeah, I agree with you. And
that's certainly the case in this one, where everyone just has like their own kind of individual look. Like there's ones that are clearly more like rotted than others. There's ones that are like almost skeletons. And so they're running through a cemetery, and that's when Trash
gets killed.
And eaten by a group of old men. Basically,
very old men. Yeah. It's ironic, completely ironic, and she's freaking out, of course, because I guess the ironic thing is that like it's funny to talk about like being dead or dying, but obviously when you're faced with it, it's a different thing. And yeah, she gets killed, but Chuck and Casey. Chuck is the one. Chad.
Yeah. Yes.
They go back to the warehouse, and Spider, Tina, and Scuzz go to the mortuary.
Right.
And they're able to reach there, and I think they're banging on the door at the mortuary.
And is this before they call the paramedics? Have they called the paramedics yet?
I don't think they've called the paramedics yet.
Okay.
They might have. Actually, I don't know.
But I kind of feel like the paramedics got there before the three of them got there.
Wait.
Maybe not, though.
But either way, whether the paramedics came before or after, I guess in just terms of just talking about it overall, that kind of section of the movie, the three get there. They see Freddy, and they're like, oh, Freddy, cool. But Frank and Freddy, like we talked about, are looking really sick. They call the paramedics. They arrive. And, they're perplexed, I guess you might say.
They basically run vitals on these two, and they have no blood pressure, no pulse. Yeah. For all intents and purposes, they're not alive. And so, like, there's this really funny moment where the two paramedics kind of, like, walk off to, like, the side.
Yeah.
And Ernie, like, tries to, like, walk in to see what they're doing. They're, like, kind of push them off. And they have, like, this quick conversation. And they're like, yeah, they're dead. Like, they're just not alive.
Yeah. It's really funny. And also, too, when the kids arrive at the mortuary, it's also discovered that, like, there are more zombies.
Yeah.
Okay. This sucks. I don't know what to do now. They are dead, but they're like, no, obviously you're not dead. I mean, on all intents and purposes, you're dead, but dead people don't walk and talk.
Yeah.
So they're like completely confused. So the paramedics, they go outside and they get killed.
Yeah, they like walk out to their ambulance, and one of them goes to the back, and one of them goes in to like radio in, and he turns on the lights, and there's just like 50 zombies there, and
it's great.
Again, yeah, it looks great, and they just ambush these two paramedics.
I like how the zombies too. They're like dressed in like there are like some that are dressed like in Confederate Civil War Confederate and stuff, and like old looking dresses from like 100 years ago. So everyone is dressed like very what they would dress in that situation. Yeah. But they get you're right. They get ambushed and eaten. And I think they know how to use the radio.
Yeah, the zombies know how to use the radio.
And they're like, call another paramedic. And they're like, oh, okay. And so they barricade the funeral home.
The funeral home. They put like boards over every window, I think that's a good moment that they kind of they show the layout, which the layout of it's kind of weird. I don't know exactly how it. Obviously, it was shot on like different like sets. It's probably sound stages.
Yeah, probably.
They don't really like connect exactly, but like they show like the different locations. There's the like medical room. there's a hallway where like the door is, and then there is the cathedral.
Yeah.
And they're basically boarding up. There's also another room, like a closet almost, kind of. There's like a bunch of like stuff on the side, and that's when one of them dies there.
There's like coffins. It's like a coffin.
Yeah,
storage
it's
area.
like a coffin storage area, and they're like putting up boards and stuff.
Yeah, and then one of the
Scuzz.
he's like he gets pulled in by one of the zombies, and he pulls out, and half of the zombie woman is on the floor, and he dies, and they're like, oh crap, and then they board it up and stuff like that, and then they take the half of that zombie into the medical room, which is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, of course, which is where Ernie's like, I just want to examine it. I just basically just like, Ernie's just like, we have one. It's completely harmless for the most part. We need to like figure out like what's going on. Like, why are they doing this? You know what I mean? Very scientific. And yeah, that's a great part of the movie. Looks great.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a puppet or not. I think it must.
It's got to be a puppet.
It's got to be.
I don't know how she would do that.
But it's like, it's like a woman. She has like long hair.
It's half a woman. It's only
it's a rotted half woman
with like a spine.
The spine is great. It's like moving around.
Yeah.
It's like excreting liquid.
Yeah.
It's great. And they're like, why? What do you want? And they're like, we want brains. Like, why do you want to eat brains? It's like, because to make the pain go away. Like, I can feel my body rot. Is like, I think exactly what she says. It's like so good.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, this is scary.
It's definitely like one of the darkest moments. Like, I think it's a pretty like lighthearted and fun film.
Yeah.
But I think that moment's like, it's pretty dark.
Because like, being alive like hurts. Being alive when you've been dead hurts.
It's just like constant
and
pain.
We need to eat brains so we can feel a little bit better. So yeah, that seems really good.
So, is it paramedics that come next, or is it the police that come next, or the paramedics that come next?
Another paramedics come,
and then they are ambushed.
I think they ambush, and I think cops are sent there. They get ambushed. They call more cops, and then they get ambushed. Like, because no one has any. It's raining. No one has any idea what's going on.
Yeah.
So like, more and more people keep coming. They keep getting eaten.
I love the scene where it's like 8 cop cars. And they're like in like this snake, like a line, and remember, like snakes.
One of the cops is a zombie, and he has like
it's incredible.
And they all 8 cop cars. They all get out, and right when they get out, the zombies
just like attack them.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's like a funny, just good visual.
And so, at this point, they realize that Frank and Ernie are going to be turned into zombies. Like it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, Frank and Freddy.
Sorry, Frank and Freddy.
Yep.
And so they decide to lock them in the chapel.
Yep.
And Freddy's girlfriend's like, no. Like, this is my Freddy. I want to be with him.
Yeah.
So they're like, okay. I like how quickly they're just like, okay.
All right, yeah.
We're just going to lock you in here with them. I find Bert is just like the coldest, just like does whatever.
He's a great character, yeah. Bert and Ernie. I can't believe that. I just realized that. It is Bert, right?
Yeah, it's Bert and Ernie.
Yeah, Bert and Ernie. Wow, okay. Well, I don't know what that has to do with anything, but okay.
I love it.
Yeah, it's funny. Okay.
So they lock Freddy, Frank, and their girlfriend, or Freddy's girlfriend, in the chapel. Mm-hmm. And Spider, Bert, Ernie, and the girlfriend. No, wait. I'm trying to think. After they lock him in there, is that when they come up with the plan to get the? I feel like they don't come up with the plan to get the car until.
No, they get Tina out of there, Freddy's girlfriend. I think.
Right.
So, yeah, pretty much. Freddy turns into a zombie, which is what we expected, and she tries to eat Tina. Mm-hmm. So they throw acid in Freddy's face to save her.
That's right, because they're trying to figure out how to like destroy all of these. What can we do?
Yeah, what can we do? Spider is pretty much like the last guy there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's Spider is like a great character because he's just kind of like, all right, we're trying to figure out what we're supposed to do. Like, he's very level-headed. But yeah, they lock him in there, and they're like, okay, what do we do? We have the cars outside. That's pretty much our only way out of here is the cars. So let's just try to get the cars.
Yeah. And
then Spider and Bert, they go out to the car, and they just drive away. I mean, there's too many zombies there to get Tina and Ernie, so they're both stuck there.
Yeah.
And they're able to kind of drive away. There's tons of zombies everywhere. and they crash at the warehouse, and they go in there, and that's pretty much where they're all at. I think that's pretty much where everybody is at.
And so, it's important to note that when Freddy turned into a zombie, him and Frank both broke out of it. I like how Frank just like kind of like, did you notice that like in the background, like when they're trying to like control Freddy, Frank just kind of like waddles his way out of the chapel.
Yeah. Well, he kills himself.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah,
in the next scene.
I think he still has his brain left.
Yeah.
I think he's guilty about killing everything, and I think he prays, and then he literally puts himself into the oven.
Yeah, it's a pretty dark moment.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god. It's like, that would be awful.
And during that scene, also not during the scene where Frank kills himself, but during the scene where the Freddy and Frank break out of the chapel, Ernie breaks his ankle, which is why Ernie doesn't go out to the car, and why Tina doesn't. Well, Tina doesn't go out because she's staying with Ernie, and they didn't think it was safe for all of them to go out. And so Ernie and Tina at this point are still being chased by Freddy. So they're like, we have to go up into the attic.
Yeah.
And like bar ourselves in. So they go up there, bar themselves in, and Freddy's like slamming on the door. And that's a pretty intense.
He's because he's like trying to talk to Tina.
Yeah, he still has some sort of like not consciousness necessarily, but like he's like trying to manipulate her, which is pretty dark.
Yeah, they're smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right. That's pretty much where everybody is at. Attic. And then the warehouse. And they go into the warehouse. And they're like, what do we do? We could call someone. Right. We go to the office. It's like, oh no, earlier we saw that they were in the office and a zombie crashed through the window. Yeah. That seems pretty funny too, where they're like in the office and a zombie just crashes through the window and they're like, oh god. And yeah, they go into and so we can't go in there.
Yeah.
So they're like, there's a phone in the basement. The tar man's in the basement.
Yes.
Which you get to see it again, the tar man zombie.
Just incredible.
Where they open it up really quickly and you get to see the full thing, which looks great as it walks out of the door. Yeah. It's like gangly and stuff. But they defeat it pretty quickly. I think they just hit it.
They like hit his head off, basically.
They hit his head off, yeah.
And just like with a baseball bat.
Yeah. Yeah, they hit it and they're like, all right, we go in the basement. And they go down in the basement. Yeah, and I think it's just it's
Spider-Bert, Chuck, and the one girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Bride of Frankenstein hair.
Yeah. And they're like, we need to call the number
because they try to call the cops.
Yeah. And the cops answer.
Police, yeah,
chief of police, and they're like, oh well, like what's going on?
We have no idea what's going on.
and in that moment, like this giant group of zombies come in and just kill all of the cops.
And they're like, oh, well, that's all the cops. And yeah, out of desperation, they're like, okay, let's call
the number on the canister.
And it wakes up the general from earlier in the movie. He's in bed. He gets up and he's assumingly talking to Bert. And he's like making notes. He's like,
I love that scene.
That scene's really good
because it's all funny. Shot from the perspective of the general. So like instead of like hearing like you don't hear or not Bert. It's Bert, right? Yeah, Bert. You don't hear like anything Bert's saying. You just kind of have to assume what's going on in the conversation. And it's incredible. And it's really well thought out. And so like he's like and then what happened? And he's like writing this stuff down. And as a viewer, you're like, especially as a first time viewer, I'm like, oh, like everything's gonna work out. It's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I know. It's a horrible, miserable movie, Austin. You know.
And the general goes to his he goes to like this big, I don't know, like computer thing, and he basically calls it in, and then we cut to like this like go lucky little like sergeant or whatever.
Like an army guy. Yeah.
An army guy, and he's like, yes sir, and we see him load like a nuclear sort of like nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And he fires it.
Yeah.
And then like the last one of the last shots is like the explosion, right? We see the explosion.
And Freddy,
I love that cut right there. It's like a fast cut, and it's you hear like a explosion or like a hit, and it's like a freeze frame of Ernie. And it's important to point out that Ernie is about to shoot Tina in the head because he has the gun. His idea is basically just to like kill her before Freddy gets there. And it's like a freeze frame of them two.
Yeah.
Right before Freddy breaks in, and then the explosion of Louisville
Yeah, getting destroyed.
getting destroyed.
Which, by the way, the movie takes place in Louisville. It's filmed in Los Angeles, which is
Yeah.
pretty clear.
Yeah. I got
It
that.
was in Los Angeles. Yeah. But yeah, it's the entire city is destroyed, and right after that, like, you get some like random audio and footage of like the general being like, "Oh yes, thank you, sir. Yep, only 4,000 killed," or something like
Yeah.
that. You know, just yep, did a really good job, and yeah, the rain will take care of that, and it's, I guess, assumed that once again it just kind of started again with the rain and the zombie particles of the explosion probably making more zombies, and that's the end of the movie. Just a nuclear blast that destroys everyone. It's almost like, it's kind of funny how it ends that way, just because like they do so much in the movie. Like there's so much activity of them like running around. It's just kind of like a movie about like the futility of even trying, kind of like the futility of just kind of like the whole thing in general.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you think that like if they had just called the number initially, like before, like if they had called before the canisters even open, would they have just taken the canisters and been like, okay, thank you,
Right.
and then that would have been disposed of? Even if they had called the number after they got sick, would they have been able to just call and then they would have come and contained the situation so that wouldn't have, I don't know, or maybe either way they just would have been like, oh, the canisters are open, well, let's bomb it. Like it's futile to even like attempt to rectify the situation. We just have to destroy the area. So it kind of makes you think like, to what extent would the city have been destroyed either way? You know what I mean?
Right.
So obviously in that situation where there's like tons of zombies everywhere, it's like, oh well, we better use our nuclear device, I guess. So yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty intense ending for a movie as funny as it is. It's the ending's pretty dark.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah.
So out of 10, what would you rate this movie, Andrew?
I would give it a 9, but I am leaning on a 10 very much. I think I would give it a 9. I kind of wish there was more of the Tar Man in the movie.
Yeah.
Because it's so good. I kind of wish there was more of him in it. But it's so good. I mean, like, the effects are so good. It's a good, like, well-run story.
Yeah.
It really only uses, like, 3 different locations, like 3 or 4 different locations. You know, very simple. Really good cast.
Yeah.
Maybe, like, one of the best horror movie casts ever. Like I said, really good balance of like the old characters, like the old, career-ist characters, and then like the punk kids. And at the end they all work together. You know what I mean? Because they're all, it's like people that you wouldn't think would associate with each other are working together to like try to figure it out. Good music too. I think good effects. I don't know. It's just like very good. I like the punk sensibility of it too a lot. I don't know why. I just think that aspect of it just really is fun. I think it's about, like I said, I think it's about as good as Dawn of the Dead, if not better. Which is maybe my favorite zombie movie, especially of those Romero movies. Although I love Day of the Dead as well. So I don't know. Yeah.
I think I'm gonna rate this movie an 8 out of 10. Like I'm leaning between like a 7 and an 8. I think visually, there's a lot of incredible moments in it.
Yeah.
Special effects are just incredible. Sound design's great. I love all of the performances. All the characters are like unique and wonderful.
Yeah.
I think
They're really thought out.
Well thought out. I think the only thing for me, it might be a little. It definitely leans a little bit into like the cheesy side, and maybe this is just part of kind of like the. I know it's like sort of tongue in cheek a little bit. But when I think of this compared to like a Romero film, I think the big difference for me, especially if we're talking about say, the Night of the Dead or the Dawn of the Dead, or even the Day of the Dead, is where I would say the Night of the Dead really isn't about zombies, right? It's obviously about other things. It's about communities and especially like Jim Crow laws and that kind of stuff, and it's just so well framed. Where this film is much more chaotic, and I think that's purposeful, right? It's so like chaotic and all over the place, and it's so dark, and I suppose in a lot of ways very nihilistic and punk in that sort of way. And I suppose Night of the Living Dead really isn't a happy movie, and Dawn of the Dead's pretty depressing too, because it's about
Dawn of the Dead is also kind of like Night of the Living Dead, and where it's almost kind of like the futility of trying in that situation.
Right. Yeah. I think I think why I may like the Dawn of the Dead a little bit more than the Return of the Living Dead is because I think what the Dawn of the Dead does so well is it has those quiet moments, and I understand it's a longer film than this, and I think those kind of quiet moments let you kind of sit with. And I haven't seen the second one, The Return of the Living Dead 2, so maybe the second one kind of deals with this idea more. Because Night of the Living Dead, right, they never kind of deal with, like, you know, what do you do once the zombies are here? Which I guess they're not really dealing with this film. So maybe it's a bad comparison to talk about the Dawn of the Dead, because that's a movie about what do you do when the zombies are already here? Like, how do you live with it?
Yeah, Dawn of the Dead is, like, already halfway through.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't watched the Return of the Living Dead sequels yet.
Yeah.
I would like to watch those, though. I've heard they're decent, but yeah, I would like to watch those sometime. They're not made by Dan O'Bannon anyway. But that's okay.
Yeah. But like I said, it is a really enjoyable film, and I think I had a good time.
Good.
Which I guess is most important.
Yeah. Good stuff.
All right. Thank you all for listening. You can find me at Austinlugo12 on Instagram, Twitter, or anywhere else.
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at ADHarp24.
And you can find our podcasts here on Instagram, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts at With Nothing to Say. And thank you all for listening.
Yeah, thank you.